In 1802, a single spark ignited a blazing inferno.
One moment, Alexander Baranov, the formidable governor of Russian America, believed his control over Sitka was absolute.
The next, he was fleeing for his life, his fort a smoldering ruin, and his men cut down by a storm of Tlingit warriors. This wasn't just a raid. It was a declaration of war. What drove the Tlingit, a people who had traded with the Russians, to unleash such a devastating surprise attack? The answer lies in a story of broken promises, cultural clashes, and a fierce determination to remain free. This is the story of the Battle of Sitka. Welcome back to our series on the forgotten Russian-American War. In part 1, we saw the initial, often brutal, encounters as Russian fur traders pushed into Alaska, met by the resilient native peoples. Now we dive into the heart of the conflict. By the turn of the 19th century, the Russian-American Company, led by the iron-willed Baranov, had established a fort they called Redoubt St. Michael, right in the heart of Tlingit territory near modern-day Sitka. To the Russians, it was a vital outpost for the lucrative sea otter trade. To the Tlingit, it was an intolerable intrusion, a symbol of arrogance on their ancestral land. The Russians disrupted their trade networks, disrespected their customs, and treated their chiefs not as equals, but as subjects. The Tlingit were not a people to be trifled with. They were a sophisticated and powerful confederation of clans, renowned for their military prowess and intricate social structure. For years, they watched the Russian presence grow, their patience wearing thin. The final straw came from a complex web of grievances. The Russians demanded tribute, took Tlingit women, and depleted the sea otter populations that were central to the Tlingit economy and way of life. A powerful Tlingit war chief, Kalian, also known as Katlian, saw that the only way to preserve their sovereignty was to drive the invaders out. He began secretly uniting the various Tlingit clans, forging an alliance that had been unthinkable just a few years prior. Their target, Baranov's fort at Sitka. The attack was brilliant in its execution. While Baranov and most of his hunting parties were away, hundreds of Tlingit warriors descended upon the fort. The remaining Russians were caught completely off guard. The Tlingit warriors, armed with traditional weapons and firearms acquired through trade, overwhelmed the stockade defenses. They showed no mercy, reclaiming their land with a ferocity that stunned the Russian Empire. The news of the fort's destruction sent shockwaves all the way to St. Petersburg. For Baranov, this was not just a military defeat. It was a personal humiliation. He had underestimated the Tlingit, and the price was a graveyard of his men and the ashes of his ambition. But Alexander Baranov was not a man who accepted defeat. Vowing revenge, he spent the next 2 years meticulously planning his counterattack. He gathered a massive force, including Russian regulars, company employees, and a large contingent of Aleut allies, coerced into fighting their fellow native peoples. Most importantly, he secured naval support, bringing in the Neva, a powerful warship from the Russian Imperial Navy. Its cannons, he believed, would be the decisive weapon against the Tlingit. In the fall of 1804, Baranov's formidable fleet appeared in Sitka Sound, finding the Tlingit waiting for them. The Tlingit, led by Katlian, had abandoned the site of the old Russian fort. Instead, they had built a new, far more defensible fort of their own, a wooden fortress called Shiskei, or the Fort of the Young Saplings. It was strategically placed and ingeniously designed to withstand a siege. The stage was set for the final, epic confrontation. The Russians, with their naval firepower and disciplined soldiers, against the Tlingit, fighting on their home ground from a fortress of their own making. Baranov demanded their surrender. The Tlingit refused. The cannons of the Neva roared to life, unleashing a barrage against the wooden walls of Shiskei. The battle for Alaska had begun in earnest. But as the smoke cleared from the initial bombardment, the Russians made a startling discovery. The cannonballs, which they believed would splinter the fort to pieces, had largely been absorbed by the flexible, interwoven design of the Tlingit walls. Their greatest weapon was not having the effect they'd expected. As the Russian ground troops prepared to storm the fortress, they had no idea that Chief Katlian was preparing a surprise of his own, one that would turn the tide of the battle and become the stuff of legend. What was his plan, and could the Tlingit possibly hold out against the might of the Russian Empire? We'll uncover that in part 3. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the thrilling conclusion.